Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast. Hopefully, you guys avoided the Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Devontae Adams explosions. Unlike me.
Jared Goff?
Oh, yeah, that one too. Yeah, I took all three in the head, basically. And all but one of my playoff leagues that I was playing in last week, I am now out of. But we're going to get you set, if you did advance or if you had those players, to figure out what I think is going to be a tumultuous session of free agents or waiver wire guys that could be very, very beneficial. Not quite like Justin Jackson from a couple of years ago when Austin Eckler was out, but a number of really key running backs that might make a significant difference. We're going to get to that right here. And welcome over to the Tuesday, December 17th edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Joe Bartel. You can follow me on Twitter at JB Fantasy Sports. You can follow Jake at RotoJake on Twitter as well, too. Of course, it's great to have you back, Jake, after having Jim last week. Jim did a fantastic job, as he always does, but we've done this basically all year. We have a sort of system in place. Your top five has been crushing it for most of this time period. So I'm happy to have you on board here for the final couple weeks of the season.
Yeah, it's good to be back here. Hopefully we'll get you guys to the championship game. Hopefully you're not in a league that plays, the championships in week 18. But we're getting into the semifinals for most of the week. So this is the week where checks are cashed. This is the week where money is won and lost, really, because, you made it here. You lose, you can get a third place game maybe, depending on your league settings. But if you advance this week, you're making money playing fantasy football. And by all intents and purposes, that's what we're here for. So I'm ready to get after it.
Yeah, let's make some money for folks right here, right away with the top five waiver wire pickup list. I think it's actually a pretty good group. Like if this was happening week 9 or week 10, we'd be relatively excited because there are names that will be consequential and less teams possibly fighting for them. So go ahead.
For sure. Yeah. We had a little bit of a lull like weeks 8 through 12 in the season. I'd have killed for this week, this list in week 9, but there are definitely some names opening up here for you. Unfortunately, not all because of good news. We start off with the Browns, and you wouldn't think there's much fantasy going on with the Browns here because Jameis was so bad. Jameis I saw a lot of people in 2 quarterback leagues, negative points here before he was benched for Dorian Thompson-Robinson. But the other factor in this game here is Nick Chubb has a broken foot. I don't think he's going to need surgery, but he's definitely out for the season. Just the worst injury luck for that guy ever. But that makes Jerome Ford the number 1 pickup of the week. He's 43% rostered in Yahoo formats when I checked this out yesterday. That's probably gone a little bit up due to first come, first serve. So he's just underneath our threshold. I mean, you don't get an RB1 this late in the season, really. And as of Tuesday right now, he has to be the top pickup. It's a decent upcoming schedule here at Cincinnati this week versus Miami. And I'm sure Pierre Strong and or Deontay Foreman will have a little bit of a role. I mean, keep in mind Jerome Ford was returning kicks even this week. So people will mix in there. But, number 1 has to be Jerome Ford here. Number 2, I'm going to go a little bit of a different direction here with the tight end, Brenton Strange of the Jaguars, 2% rostered. Now, yes, you may say I don't want any receiving options on the Jacksonville Jaguars, especially when Mac Jones is the quarterback. But Strange was targeted 12 times this week. He caught 11 of those. And this week he has a matchup against the Raiders, who are 30th against opposing tight ends in half PPR formats here. So we're going to get to this later in the show. I tried to incorporate some cuts this week because it's a lot easier to cut good players when there are 2 weeks left, right? Because, it's like, okay, if I'm not going to start him this week or next week, then I might as well let him go. And there are some tight ends that maybe you wouldn't think to cut that I think are pretty droppable this week in exchange for Brenton Strange, who's getting the volume and the matchup. For me, number 3, pretty much my only one on this list that is universally available. That's our cover boy, Craig Reynolds of the Detroit Lions. Obviously, David Montgomery out for the rest of the year with a sprained MCL. And Jahmyr Gibbs is, of course, the guy there, right? I mean, he's the number 1, but they don't want to give Jahmyr Gibbs 25 touches a game. They are already devastated by injuries on both sides of the ball here. They want to save him to some degree. Yes, it's a plus for Jahmyr Gibbs owners, I guess, but Craig Reynolds is going to be the guy that I imagine gets some of the between the tackles work, especially early in the game, some early down work, and a little bit of goal line work as well here. So Craig Reynolds isn't going to quite be David Montgomery, but good enough to be worth a pickup here this week. Then number 4, Kendre Miller of the New Orleans Saints. Yep. Alvin Kamara left in the 4th quarter with a groin injury here. We don't know quite how severe that is, so the uncertainty makes it makes it tough. He could rise up to the top 1 or 2 pickups here if Kamara all of a sudden isn't practicing all week.
Well, let's add the uncertainty. They play Monday too. You think about all the different games going on throughout the week, Thursday and Saturday, and then a Monday game. That complicates this as well.
Yeah, absolutely here. So that's why Kendra Miller's a little bit further down on the list, because we really don't know, how serious the Kamara thing is. But after Kamara left in the fourth quarter, it was Kendra Miller that got eight carries, I believe. And meanwhile, Jamal Williams, the other one in the backfield, had 0 touches even after Kamara left. Now, granted, they were in a little bit of comeback mode, trying to play from behind here. So you're between the tackles, Jamal Williams type guy doesn't necessarily need that. But Kendra Miller has, a pretty high draft pedigree, finally healthy, finally out of the doghouse, ready to go. And then lastly, number 5, a couple people could have gone this way, and I know he's been mentioned on and off all season, but I threw on Romeo Doubs of the Packers, only 38% rostered. He came back, and he's really kind of one of the most consistent possession receivers. When he was healthy, unfortunately, he had the disciplinary issue, and then of course a concussion that cost him 2 games earlier in the season. But he came back and he looked good. 2 touchdowns on the Sunday night game against Seattle here. One was a slant up near the goal line. One was a long pass that he picked like off his shoelaces. It was a beautiful, beautiful catch for Romeo Doubs here. He clearly, whatever it is, he has it, and he's definitely back in play here for the Packers. For me, it's easier to trust Doubs than Christian Watson, who's become more of the big play threat there, but isn't getting tons of volume on a game by game basis. And even if he is, it's never really consistent. Doubs, I feel like, is the guy who finds the holes in the zone and moves the chains here. Whereas Jaden Reed, yes, he gets some work. He'll get loose once in a while, gadgety, fun plays. Gets a lot of volume that way. But I think Doubs, this Packer offense, you saw it running at full cylinders. It can support 3 wide receivers, a tight end, and a running back from a fantasy perspective. No problem at all. So Romeo Doubs is my number 5 at 38%. I think our lists are mostly similar, but just let's give yours a run through, Joe.
Yeah, real quick with Doubs. 3 catches, 2 of them were touchdowns. You talked about the slant, and then final effective play of the game for the Packers offense. I love him a lot. I think Doubs is my favorite Packer. I go contrarian to a fault with my fandom, and I won't ever like Aaron Rodgers or Jordan Love as my favorite guy. I'll pick Randall Cobb has been my forever receiver. That's the jersey I still wear to games. But I think Doubs fits that because of his teammate, his chemistry. I think he's one of the better Packers just overall. There's just not enough volume passing wise. And while I might love him a lot, that's the hindrance from a fantasy perspective. It's touchdown or bust. Now that might occur Monday night. I think the Packers should be favored by a pretty substantial margin against the Saints, but just something to consider. You're right. Our lists are effectively the same. I have Craig Reynolds, I think number 2 actually among the list, just because I like the idea that he's widely available and we know there's a certain workload. I do not think it's going to be 1-for-1. Just make Jahmyr Gibbs take off David Montgomery's work.
Absolutely not.
I don't think it's physically possible for the Lions to do that. So I think Craig Reynolds is going to get at least 10 plus carries. And we've seen in past times that he's going to be functioning at close to a 4.5 yard per carry, even against good defense like the Bears this week too. So I like Craig Reynolds if you're in a must-fill spot. Jerome Ford actually was available in 3 of the 5 leagues that I'm still left in, which I thought was surprising. Ford is number 1, and I do think he effectively takes the number 1 overall work. Now, the switch from Jameis Winston to Dorian Thompson-Robinson, we'll talk about in just a second, at quarterback, is going to make that offense way worse. And it sucks because this was going to be a great matchup for Winston in the passing attack, and I thought there was going to be a lot of points.
Yep.
Dorian Thompson-Robinson is going to be a significant drop-off in that offense. The Browns might win games, but it will be a major, major hindrance. So Jerome Ford, Craig Reynolds right there. I have Kendra Miller as well. I think Kendra Miller actually has a good chance to play. We'll see. That the Saints are out of it effectively. I know that the graphic on Sunday night was showing technically there's a 0.03% chance they can make the playoffs. They will not. And it might be good to see what they have in that 3rd round pick from 2 years ago in Kendra Miller. So I actually think this is a really good spot for him. And against this Packers defense, I'll be very interested to see what Kendra Miller could do come Monday night. So I have Jalen McMillan listed number 4. I just want to give him flowers a little bit. I mean, the Buccaneers offense has been fantastic all season long. It's Lamar Jackson, it's Josh Allen, it's Jalen Hurts. And I think Baker Mayfield is quarterback 5 in fantasy this season. It's been basically all season long. And
Baker Mayfield and the Bucs they have a great rest of season schedule. We're looking at the Cowboys this week and the Panthers in the championship game. A lot of points can be scored there. Yeah,
absolutely. I liked the Brenton Strange call. The only thing was there are theoretically 4 tight ends still at play in most of these leagues. And are you playing over Travis Kelce? Are you playing over Sam Laporta. Maybe that is the correct answer, at least in that case for Brenton Strange.
I don't think many Laporta teams got this far.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, he got 18 points in full point PPR this past week, which is just was on my mind. But you're right. I just don't know of many scenarios like you have the Pat Fryermuths of the world that were probably fine enough. And
yeah, I mean, it could be people that maybe lost Goddard a couple weeks ago, or I
think even the Goddard people that's like it's
that have stuck around with Kyle Pitts all year and are finally ready to drop him.
Are you speaking from experience, Jake? Is that what's happening?
Yes. I haven't actually dropped him yet. I've benched him, and yeah.
The leagues that I've seen advance to this point, it's almost like 75% Brock Bowers or Trey McBride. In that instance, you're playing both those guys over Brenton Strange. But
that's fair.
I think that's completely fine. I think it's definitely worth mentioning, especially given Mac Jones too. So Brenton Strange was in that list. I think that Dobbs call was totally fine. And then there was one other receiver, and I guess I forgot to jot it down, but I'll scroll through the notes. Oh, and I also had Rashod Bateman as well. We get to benefit from Rashod Bateman having to make a flex start.
We got a little lucky there
in the NFFC. Yes, a little lucky is definitely true. But I think there's opportunity for the Ravens, not the stat pad per se, and certainly won't do so against the Steelers. Although without TJ Watt, changes that defense significantly, and we don't know if he's going to play. But it's all Josh Allen. He's going to win the MVP, and rightfully so. The Ravens are a team, and possibly the only team in the NFL that'll be like Colorado in college, where they're going to just do whatever they can to make Travis Hunter be the Heisman favorite. I think the Ravens have a little bit of that in them, and Lamar Jackson, and lo and behold, 5 touchdowns against a pathetic Giants defense. Just saying it's out there. I wouldn't mind playing Bateman if I have to.
None of which went to Derrick Henry, by the way.
Yes, massive killer. Eric in the chat mentions that Joe Mixon and Derrick Henry were absolutely killer.
Those are my two starting running backs in the one league that I did not advance in.
So. Oh yeah, and they've been. You would have felt really good entering the week with those
especially
two guys.
With those matchups. Ooh, juicy.
Yeah, so our top 5 list I think is effectively the same. Some combination of Jerome Ford, I think, gets a downgrade with DTR quarterback. You have Kendrick Miller, you have Craig Reynolds, Brenton Strange, and then whether it be McMillan, Rashod Bateman, Romeo Dobbs in shallower leagues, definitely up there.
Yeah, I mean, so to summarize, it's Ford, Reynolds, Miller, and then wherever your needs are at. Ford's, Reynolds, Miller should be pick up just to block your opponent.
Correct.
Or in any situation like that, they should be rostered just to be safe in case one of these guys really hits it big and you don't want to find yourself playing them this week or next. But then the rest of that, it kind of depends on your situation there. If you're in a strange situation, maybe, or if you need a wide receiver. But fortunately, I shouldn't say fortunately, but the carnage was at running back this week. Chances are you're starting your guys at the other positions.
Yeah, let's take a word for our sponsors, Blue Wire, and then we'll come back with the streaming quarterbacks. All right, we're back. And again, just talking about the streaming quarterback aspect of things. There's a number of injuries. We're recording this Tuesday. We'll have to kind of find out for sure. But for example, Mahomes is now going to enter a stretch where the Chiefs are playing 3 games in 11 days. They just played their first. They're going to then play Saturday night against the Texans. And then they have the Wednesday Netflix Christmas Day. I'm going to tell you right now, Jake, that the Netflix voodoo magic that they paid to make sure the Chiefs were going to be on their subscription service on Christmas Day will guarantee he does not play Saturday. He will not play against the Texans. Netflix is going to come in and say, Mahomes, if he's going to be ready, has to be ready for our game, not NBC. F those guys.
Yeah, see, the thing is, though, is I don't think Netflix can actually handle the bandwidth if Mahomes would play here, because we all saw what happened with that Tyson-Paul fight. I even rigged it up to watch at my favorite bar, and no go at all there. So I doubt Netflix can handle it.
They don't care. They get the subscriptions either way, Jake. That's all it is.
They still got paid. Yeah, exactly. So
I'm serious in a sense that I actually think Netflix is going to have a hand in this, but let's pretend they don't. I would be very, very, very surprised if Mahomes...
Let's talk about the UFO drones too, Joe.
There's a lot of conspiracy things we could talk about, Jake. There's a lot of things I have in my mind.
Don't even get me started on the NBA, but no, quarterback streaming here.
I would be surprised if Mahomes plays this week. I guess I'm just going to say it that way.
Yeah, exactly. So quarterback streaming, I try to look at this in a sense where chances are under most league formats, unless it's, I see more and more, it's becoming more popular that people are doing total points among the 6 teams in the playoffs, or they are doing 2-week playoff matchups. But in most standard formats here, there are 4 teams alive. And I try to think of this in a sense of, okay, normally when we have this quarterback streaming discussion in week 6, when there are bye weeks weeks, and there are 12 teams vying for quarterbacks. It's very broad, right? But now there are only 4 teams left. So I really looked at the quarterbacks, on the list that are widely rostered, widely used on a week-to-week basis, and try to pick out the guys that you either bench or might not be options this week. And obviously Mahomes is atop that list, home against Houston with the high ankle sprain here. Again, you and I agree that it'll be very, very surprising if he actually played. Justin Herbert is another one where he got really banged up at the end of that game. He had been somebody who of course I made the mistake of starting Herbert over Baker in one league, still advanced.
Okay.
Still advanced here,
you.
but yeah, I was looking at that Tampa Bay defense matchup really, but they held their own. Proved me wrong there. Managed to advance nonetheless. But Justin Herbert, even if he comes back and plays from what looks like another ankle injury, he's been hobbled all season long. Mm-hmm. He comes back and plays. He's at Denver, so not only are you at the road, where who knows what weather's going to be involved, you're on the road against a Denver defense that is one of the best in the league in playmaking and all of these things here. You don't want to start Justin Herbert at all.
No.
I don't think there's a situation in which you would. There's another situation on the other side of that Kansas City Houston matchup. Do you really want to be starting CJ Stroud?
No, not at all.
Chances are, if you were, unless it was a 2 quarterback league where the rest of your team were stacked, if you were starting CJ Stroud, you probably aren't here. I mean, he's had more than 16 since they're. I want to try to put this into a good stat, but from week 7 to now, he's been over 17 fantasy points once. It's been brutal, and obviously there's some scoring, tendencies there. But do you really want to start Stroud on the road at KC when they might not have to keep up with Carson Wentz?
Right.
I don't trust starting CJ Stroud. Jaden Daniels has a tough matchup against Philly, but I still think you throw him out there.
You still have to play Jaden Daniels, even though it definitely is a suppressed point total.
Stafford at the Jets on the road, decent thing. I mean,
the other one's Geno too. After the dirty hit, says Rappaport. Did you see that tweet at all? That Geno Smith left after a dirty hit, which you and I, we're Packer fans. I don't think we're biased. Certainly I am not. That was far from a dirty hit. It was Edgerrin Cooper who's diving to make a sack and slips, and Geno's jumping up in the air and comes down on Edgerrin Cooper, who's at his ankles. Like, that's not a dirty hit.
I don't get that. Edgerrin Cooper, it was awesome in his return, by the way. But yeah, anyway, Geno, he's got that knee injury. It looks like he's going to practice this week. He's got a pretty good matchup home against Minnesota. But that's interesting. I mean, Anthony Richardson just kind of stinks. Stafford, on the road against the Jets, I threw him down. I don't think I'd bench Goff at Chicago, but weather and blowout potential exists there. There are a lot of quarterbacks that you're a little bit shaky on. So then you kind of get to the streamers here. Russell Wilson, 49% rostered. He's at the Ravens, who have been, pretty dreadful against the pass all year long. And Russell Wilson possibly gets Pickens back. So, that is a possible option for if you have to pivot from Mahomes, Stroud, Herbert, Geno. I don't love this, but Aaron Rodgers is 35% home against the Rams. It seems like they haven't actually given up, or he just wanted to have fun with his buddy Devontae Adams this week.
Trying to give him the Hall of Fame. That's what he's doing these last 4 or 5 weeks.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, hey, if that's what it takes to motivate you, whatever, that's still something. Maybe I don't know if he wants to run it back with these guys next year or what, but whatever the situation, Aaron Rodgers is actually, I mean, over the last couple of weeks, Aaron Rodgers has way outperformed CJ Stroud. So, what does that tell you here? I'm just looking at his game log quick. Yeah. 31, 21, 18, 18 in this last 4 weeks. There's a bye week in there, so Rodgers is interesting. Obviously, got to X out Jameis. I had him, during early prep against Cincinnati. I mean, the Browns are way less fun, right, when Dorian Thompson-Robinson is their quarterback. And for those who missed it, it seems like it was announced this morning that Dorian Thompson-Robinson would be the starting quarterback this week. The matchup is at Cincinnati. We know that Cincinnati defense, if the Cincinnati defense even gave up 25 points a game, Joe Burrow would be the top of the MVP race right now because they'd have a decent record. But unfortunately, the Bengals can't seem to hold anyone under 30 points ever.
Can we do this question? Because I actually think it's relevant. I know we're talking about quarterbacks,
yeah,
but Bengals defense, DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson announced as the starting quarterback for the Browns. Jerry Jeudy has been a top 10 fantasy receiver with Jameis Winston as the quarterback, but now the switch to DTR, super mobile, not these inaccurate per se, but the limitations of the offense and also the willingness to throw the ball are completely different with the second-year quarterback in there. Where does Jerry Jeudy rank for you now? Because I have an answer, and I was already asking myself this question while you're talking about Winston and downgrading the DTR, but I'm curious where your thoughts are.
I mean, wide receiver 25, 30, is that too generous?
That's exactly the range. I was thinking like 26.
Like, this is just way off the top of my head, though. I'd have to really like dive into the look here. But yeah, Scott makes a great point in the thing about the DTR career yards per attempt. It just
again,
just
horrible
happening.
defense of the Bengals, and the Browns will have to keep pace to a certain extent because we know the Bengals are going to score no matter what. But
yeah,
okay, again, so a top 8 fantasy receiver.
So here's.
Not due to injury, now going to top 30.
Here's a fun thing that I just found. I'm looking through Dorian Thompson-Robinson's game log. The last time this season that he actually had a significant run in a game happens to be Week 7 against the Bengals, in which game he was 11 for 24 for 82 yards and 2 interceptions. He ran the ball 3 times for 44 yards. I find a way out of playing. Obviously, you can probably cut Elijah Moore at this point. And find a way out of playing Jerry Jeudy if you can. There's no reason to play Jeudy in a 2 wide receiver league. 3 wide receiver leagues, I could stomach it, but I don't like it.
I'm with you. Yeah, I would need to know actual specifics. But what was a basically lock, can't miss play is now one that I would absolutely be certain, be wary. I'd be certain to be wary of, I guess I'd put it that way.
And even heading into this week, you thought, man, I love Jeudy in the playoffs here. Look who he gets.
Set up great. Right? And as far, I'll give you 2 hypotheticals here. So Geno Smith or Anthony Richardson. We talked about Anthony Richardson, maybe available in certain spots, Geno Smith being banged up. I think the play is Anthony Richardson given the rushing floor. But if we're debating 2-ish streamers, there's a floor set with those guys.
I think I'd probably take Rodgers over either of them.
Okay.
I might take Drake May over either of them.
That's a good one too.
He is at Buffalo as long as the weather's fine. You know, we never it's too early to tell exactly right now, but Drake May has looked pretty consistently good. And I mean, Jared Goff carved up the Bills. A lot of that was, garbage time catch up when they weren't really in the game, but kind of. And obviously I don't think May can quite do that. He doesn't have the same weapons here, but 13% rostered. That's a possible stream too.
And then and you can kind of just use this as one final just run through of everybody. But of the 2 quarterback options, so let's just say Mason Rudolph, who has been announced he's going to replace Will Levis. I think Mac Jones in this league is available. Whatever giant quarterback plays, Spencer Rattler and DTR. Which one of these guys? You have to play one. Which one do you want to play?
So between Mason Rudolph, Carson Wentz, Mac Jones, do we say Tim Boyle or Drew Lock?
I think we'd say Tim Boyle.
Doesn't matter. I'm not picking them anyway. Spencer Rattler as the starter here. Let me just double check here. Who do the Titans have this week? I don't have that off the top of my head.
I shouldn't. It's the Colts. Yes, I think it's the Colts or the Jags. No, it's the Colts because the Jags have the Raiders.
Yeah, I guess, Matt. It comes down to Mason Rudolph or Mac Jones, and
it's not a good spot to be. No, I agree.
No, but there's going to be someone in a 2 quarterback league that is probably in the spot.
For what it's worth, Mason Rudolph has been okay in different spot starts. We talked about again, Scott in the chat talked about DTR and his career yards per average of 3.7.
Yeah,
Mason Rudolph can at least do better than that. So I think it is.
Yeah,
Mason
you're
Rudolph.
right. I think I agree on Mason Rudolph because Mason Rudolph at least knows how to utilize Tajay Spears. His 5-yard dump off that Tajay takes for 45 yards.
That's the Bengals defense not trying. That's not like Mason Rudolph did a good job. That's the Bengals completely checked out of the game that they knew they had already won, which is stupid. Doesn't look good on tape. It really didn't look good, I thought, live as well. But that's what that was.
Yeah, fair. I guess you could certainly make that case.
Let's go over to the running backs again. We've kind of highlighted most of these in our top 5 list, but just for worth reiterating, Jerome Ford and Kendra Miller and Craig Reynolds, your top 3 searches, if you're on any of the major platforms, they'll likely be the most rostered guys as of recent. And I think it's fair to say it's a dump your fab on all 3, if not to use them, to remove the option of somebody else getting to have them too, getting a spot start running back for free off the waivers.
Yeah, it's unlikely we get to eat like this in the waiver wire pool next week for championship game. So yeah, most certainly it is one of those situations where you grab Ford, grab Kendra Miller, grab Craig Reynolds. He just missed my top 5, but who I just mentioned, Tajay Spears. He's 44%. He's 44% rostered, 24 fantasy points in half PPR last week. It's not like Tony Pollard was super efficient. He also lost a fumble. So take with that what you want, and I think the two can coexist. Obviously, like you said, some of this was the Bengals, maybe just throwing the towel in, didn't really want to try at the end of that game. But Spears caught 6 of 7 passes for 87 yards and a touchdown. And remember, he was banged up for a while, missed a couple games. Now he's back. I think. Honestly, I remember at the end of last season, too, there was a point where he made a little run, and that made me keep him for like $1 or $2 in a fantasy league. Obviously, I hardly started him. Maybe I didn't even start him more than once.
Well, he was an 8th-round pick in redraft leagues because of this, that he would, we don't know what Tony Pollard is, and the Titans offense might get better, yada, yada, and obviously doesn't play up. But I think Tajay Spears has talent, and you can say what you want about the Bengals' defense and effort. Again, we're talking about a 50-yard reception. That was a 5-yard check down on either the second last or literally the last play of the game. The Titans-Bengals won. Bengals defense was bad, but Spears really had a number of great cuts. Even if it was a great effort, that's a 30-yard play. That was a 5-yard check down. I think Spears, when healthy, is a really good running back. And Tony Pollard has had so much work this season that if his play falls off, I wouldn't be at all surprised.
Yeah, I mean, you could make a case where if you don't need a starter this week and are looking for a high upside flyer that you might actually start next week if the Cards go, yeah, Spears could be on that list. Yeah, he's at Indy this week and at Jacksonville the following week, who are 24th and 31st against opposing running backs in half PPR formats respectively. Now, granted, you could also make the case that Spears does his best work when the Titans are playing from behind, but nonetheless, here those are good matchups here on paper.
Hold on. My body is ready to hear how you are going to correctly say the Chargers beat writer knew how the backfield would develop for the Chargers. Please admit that Joe Bartel knew eventually Kamani Vidal would be a far more significant factor than Gus Edwards.
It's very nice, Joe, that you know this now, than that it took a couple weeks and that I still get a double bacon butterburger deluxe out of this whole ordeal. Right? But yes, I'm putting it on here. Kamani Vidal's past Gus Edwards in snap share. I think Gus Edwards can be safely cut. This week it was 67% to 27%.
That's game script related, but still.
Yeah, definitely game script. They had to come back. They found themselves in a hole against Tampa Bay here, and he dominated in routes too, 16-3. What I think is apparent here is that without J.K. Dobbins, the Chargers can't run the football at all, right? And they're, who knows how that changes if Herbert can't play for whatever reason. And it's a tough sledding, going to be tough sledding out there against Denver. But Kamani Vidal is of interest, I will say, because I did throw Gus Edwards on the cut list this week. So
the only concern I have on just saying outright cutting Gus Edwards, you're not playing Gus Edwards, and I don't think anybody else is. So it's fine to do so. Like that was our whole podcast last week when I was with Jim Coventry. We were saying, I want the golden ticket running backs. I'll pick up Trey Benson. I'll pick up Blake Corum, Cam Akers.
Yeah. Trey Benson's out now too.
Right. So, and that's actually not a bad one to mention as well too, that you could go even, because I think Amari DeMarcado is also on injured reserve. So it's technically running back 4 behind James Conner for the Cardinals. But I want to remove the ability for somebody else to get what we're basically having here, a Craig Reynolds, but more importantly, a Jerome Ford that you could immediately throw into your lineup. I don't want that scenario to occur. That's not going to happen with Gus Edwards. You're not getting Gus Edwards to play. The Broncos are not going to be scoring as many points as the Buccaneers. So therefore the Chargers will have a longer runway to get 2.5 yards per carry with Gus Edwards, but they're going to get 2.5 yards per carry with Gus Edwards. That's the difference between Dobbins and Gus Edwards right now. So I'm with you. I think Gus Edwards is a drop. I'm not picking up Kamani Vidal. And actually I think I'd rather have, I'm blanking out now, that the Cardinals 4th string running back with Benson out. We should at least mention that one a little bit.
DJ Dallas is who we're looking at.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I looked that up while we went on the other, Kamani Vidal.
Yeah, Benson was ruled out in that Sunday game against the Patriots. He had an ankle injury. James Conner, and this probably goes underreported, was signed to a 2 or 3 year extension 2 weeks ago. So people who are drafting Trey Benson like me can feel frustrated that James Conner was going to leave in free agency, now won't, and probably is a drop given that he was ruled out with that ankle injury. I'll have to see. But DJ Dallas, actually an interesting one in deeper formats as well too. So just repeat: Jerome Ford, Craig Reynolds, Kendre Miller, and then these few other guys in deeper formats, trying to remove any sort of semblance of golden ticket running backs to get. Before we go over to the receivers, let's get a word from our sponsors, LIV Golf, a new season of LIV Golf and its fantasy affiliate is coming in 2025. New prizes, new ways to win, and more are all coming in the new season. Get ready to play and sign up now at fantasy.livegolf.com. All right, and then real quick, let's also get a word from our guy, McMillan, who has been absolutely crushing it all fantasy season long. I think he's still, if he's not in the top 250 of Scott Fishbowl, he's darn close. And let's hear what you have to say about DraftKings Pick 6.
We're proud to be brought to you by DraftKings Pick 6. So many NFL offerings each week over at Pick 6. Been enjoying playing on the Pick 6 platform each and every week of the NFL season. Think a certain quarterback will throw for more than 300 yards. How about your favorite receiver scoring a touchdown? Check out Pick 6, the newest way to play fantasy football and win cash right now with DraftKings. Here's how it works. Just pick 2 to 6 players of the same sport and choose if they'll have more or less of a given stat. Yards, catches, touchdowns, etc. Lock in those picks and compete against opponents for a shot at huge cash prizes. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use our code ROTOPICK. That's ROTOPICK. Again, ROTOPICK, ROTOPICK. If you're a new Pick 6 customer, play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits guaranteed. Just use that code ROTOPICK. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-78-89-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
All right, we're back at talking receivers here for the Week 16 Waiver Wire show. We talked about the top with Romeo Doubs, if he's still available, under 40% rostered. Caught those 2 touchdowns, only 1 reception afterwards in that Seahawks game and Seahawks victory in Seattle. I still like the Rashod Bateman part of things, given that the Ravens offense is really good. Absolutely. And against the Steelers, they might have to pass a little bit if George Pickens is back. And then Jalen McMillan now, 2 touchdowns last week, and I think 3 over the past 2 weeks, and has a really, really good rest of season schedule, at least for the playoffs between the Cowboys and Panthers.
Exactly. All 3 of those options have really good Week 17 matchups, too. Dobbs has got Minnesota, who's 32nd against the receivers in half PPR. Bateman has got Houston, who's 27, and McMillan has Carolina, who's 18. So even if you're not necessarily looking this week, you might as well protect yourself a little bit and have a quality option on your bench to start in championship week.
This was a really interesting one. And we knew that Noah Brown last Tuesday was going to be out for some extended time. He was placed on injured reserve Saturday. We didn't know who would emerge as the other receiver. In this case, it was Diami Brown. I think he's now a third-year guy. I liked him a fair bit coming out of college. He had a bit of an appearance on our show, I think, last year in a similar capacity with Sam Howell. Now, obviously, very different offense, very significantly better with Jaden Daniels. I'm worried about this matchup, though, against the Eagles, and I don't think we can take it super seriously in that regard.
Yeah, I don't love it, but Diami Brown, 78% snap share. Jerry, we got to get rid of that lime green font here on here. That's really hard to read. 4 targets. I mean, him and Olamide Zaccheaus had an equal amount of targets. Yeah. Brown had a little more. I mean, Brown would be wide receiver 2 there. Also, keep in mind that Zach Ertz suffered a concussion in the second quarter and missed the rest of the game here. If Ben Sinnott sneaks in there, maybe, but possibly more targets to go around here. Honestly, I mean, Terry McLaurin could have had an even bigger game. I think Daniels missed him a couple times in this one. McLaurin is the man here, but at some point, defense has got to realize they got to shut him down. So, Diami Brown kind of makes the list here a little bit. Another guy like this, I looked at the Colts, Adonai Mitchell.
The pick 6 specialist himself.
Yes, exactly. Alec Pierce has a concussion. He might miss time. I saw a little bit on Red Zone of that last drive where Richardson was really trying to force the ball to Adonai Mitchell, so maybe there's something there. I mean, we're talking, your 20-team leagues here where you really got to pick somebody up. What did I see on Reddit? There's somebody it was in a 60-team league where every quarterback can be used twice. And they were talking about how the best player available was Bo Melton to pick up because they needed a receiver. And so honestly, that's what we're looking at here. So Diami Brown, Adonai Mitchell. I threw in Malik Washington on this list too here. If Jalen Waddle has kind of a knee injury for Miami, in case he misses time, Malik Washington would presumably be the guy here. As far as pickups go, we mentioned Dobbs, Bateman, McMillan last year. I'm sure Keon Coleman is still available in a good amount of leagues. I wouldn't touch Cedric Tillman with the Browns coming back. Last week you guys talked about Olave coming off IR pretty soon, or even
Bub Means as well too for the Saints.
For that matter here. It's not a lot of real good options here, But I was looking through the cut list. Like realistically, at this point in the season, if you had to cut Amari Cooper, I think you could. If you had to cut Deebo Samuel, I think you could. If you had to cut Tank Dell, might be a little more controversial, but I think you could. Westbrook Akine with Mason Rudolph.
Okay,
I mean, yeah, you could cut him.
That's like that one meme where it's all the 3 soldiers and the 1 clown that are hiding behind the wall.
Okay, I threw Xavier Legette on the cut list too. I'm just trying to think of
so
names.
Hold on. Cutting Amari Cooper or Deebo Samuel or Tank Dell. I play a lot of Madden, Jake. I've talked about this before. That feels like such a bait. Like you're like, all right, I see this user slot receiver in the middle. I know the quarterback does too. I'm sitting there with my user linebacker, just like, all right, let's jump that route. And then you get the pick, you take it back for the house. It's awesome. To drop Amari Cooper, Deebo Samuel, or Tank Dell, and then your opponent see that, pick them up and play them to get the 0 or 5 points or whatever it is. That would just be the ultimate cherry in a situation like that. That's the only way I'd do it though, because if any of those guys actually does anything relevant in the scenario for the playoffs, you'd be ultra pissed. Like I'm not dropping any of them. It's going to get even more upset if one of them is going off for my other team because I just rage dropped them. That's all.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, Deebo Samuel's been sitting on my bench for 6 weeks in a row in
That's
total fantasy purgatory.
There.
Yeah, I suppose. But I'm just, if you want to cut, if you need someone that's actually going to help you, especially if you're in a shallower league, those guys might be okay to drop.
I like the just baiting your opponent. Please play Deebo. Please.
That would be some 3D chess.
See the punishment that I've been dealing with.
I cut Daniel Jones in a 2-quarterback league. It was a family one, only so my dad could pick him up and play him against me and get negative points. I was like, so how do you like my gift, buddy?
Well, I have Daniel Jones and Drew Lock in that super deep RotoWire Dynasty League that we're in. Thankfully, it's not super flex yet. I've been playing Lamar Jackson, but Lamar's one bye week. I didn't have a quarterback.
Prescott was out for the season, so was not prepared for that to go to Superflex. Anyway, I think that's enough on receivers here. Yes. We kind of started talking stupid for a little bit there. I did. That's me. I'll raise my hand.
That's fine.
Okay, so
let's go to the tight ends. Yeah.
Who'd you guys talk about last week?
I mean, we mentioned Juwan Johnson a decent amount, and of course, he didn't do a whole lot for a lot of folks, including me. We started in the flex. Calcaterra with Dallas Goedert out for the Eagles, and then the one that I felt really good on, and I did a few of the national radio hits that I do throughout the year, and I had mentioned Stone Smart, and people are like, "Is that like an AI generated name?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it sounds really bad. I understand." Key and Peele, that's perfect. I understand in your fantasy playoffs, you would never want to rely on somebody called Stone Smart to carry it, but 5 catches, 51 yards. He did have the fumble, but was a factor in there, and I think was like a top 10 scoring fantasy tight end. Stone Smart, fine. And actually, he's probably still on the list this week, too, if you really need to go down the direction.
Yeah, right there. And, of course, at the top of the show, I mentioned Brenton Strange. 12 targets, 11 catches is something that there's nothing to, you have to take that seriously at this point, even if it is the Jaguars. They're at the Raiders, who are 30th against opposing tight ends here. You definitely want to think about it. I think cutting Juwan Johnson after a couple weeks
that's fine.
Possibly in play. I think cutting Kyle Pitts. He had I think this week, it was the worst defense against opposing tight ends, and he still caught 4 for 28. So just that experiment is done.
If Kyle Pitts gets traded to the Chiefs this offseason, are you back in? Will you draft Kyle Pitts in redraft leagues if he goes 12. To the Chiefs? No. He's going to be like a round 7 guy if he gets traded to the Chiefs.
No,
would you do it?
No.
I this is a shower thought. I was like trying to figure out in what scenario am I going to buy back in again.
You assume Kelsey retires in that situation, right?
Yeah.
Kelsey retires, they get Kyle Pitts. Oh God. Yeah,
and he'll be like drafted as tight end 8 or 9 again.
Yeah, I'll get baited right back in here. I almost
that's where I'm at too.
I almost threw Cade Otton on the cut/bench list because he's been pretty tame the last couple weeks. Hasn't had a whole lot going on since Mike Evans has came back and and Jalen McMillan is starting to break out a little bit. But they have the Cowboys this week, so I lost a couple tight ends in Stake League, right? So now I'm picking between Grant Calcaterra, who I'm going to cut, and Cade Otton. And Brenton Strange is not available. I'll probably cut Calcaterra for Stone Smart with my last fab dollar, but I don't think I play him over Cade Otton.
I think you don't have to use a fab dollar in that scenario, but and just for a reminder to folks, Will Dissly has not been ruled out yet. It was supposed to be a multi-week thing, so the assumption is Dissly's not going to play, and then Hayden Hurst technically, I think, is eligible to return off of injury reserve this week. We haven't really heard a whole lot from the veteran tight end. If either of those things happen, if it's Dissly coming back and playing, or if it's Hayden Hurst operating as the receiving tight end, then you could put Stone Smart away and I have to worry about it. But if it's just number one tight end for the Chargers, it's Lab McConkey, it's the red zone opportunity of Quentin Johnston, and then tight end for the Chargers. And that's where we're talking about Stone Smart in this equation too. So I'm with you on that. Probably the most impactful waiver wire stuff that we could discuss right now is the streaming defensive section, which very much matters, very interchangeable at this point. I think there's a lot of really good options.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, there are plenty of good options this week, and this is just as important as anything else. If you're, it's just as important as your wide receiver 3 in some situations here. So let's run down some options here. Got to start with the Packers, right? 50% rostered Yahoo, only 41% on ESPN. Because they just barely made Jerry's ranking threshold, and I definitely agree. So much going in favor of the Packers defense now, who's a top 5 defense in takeaways to begin with here. But they get the Saints at home on Monday Night Football. They're going to get an injured or a bad quarterback, whatever happens here. It looks like it's going to be Spencer Rattler.
Possibly no Kamara too.
Yeah, possibly no Kamara. What's this? I mean, Olave coming back, whatever, doesn't matter if Spencer Rattler is the quarterback. We'll see here. But Green Bay, they played great against Seattle. Their defense played excellent. And that was without Jair Alexander and Bullard, who they both could be seen back pretty soon. Edgerrin Cooper, a giant factor in his return from a 3-game absence here. People mentioned the hit on Geno, but he had an interception, a sack, and 7 tackles. That's like IDP worthy right there. So
right. Kingsley Enagbare had 2 sacks and a tackle for loss on one drive.
One drive on 1 3 and out. Yeah, exactly. But anyway, of course you're going to get love from the Packers defense here, but they're actually an excellent fantasy defense because of their pass rush, because of a Saints team that's all but given up and has no offense, because they're at home, and it'll be in single digits, I think, in Lambeau. I think we're getting right back down to cold.
Oh, wonderful.
Because I remember it being 30 just a couple days ago and being told, another week we'll be back to single digits. So, Frozen Tundra's back. Lambeau Field is back here. Let's throw them out there here. I also wanted to put on as far as higher rostered options, Houston is 47% rostered at Kansas City, which is Carson Wentz potentially. Could be a pick 6 or 2 in there. The Houston secondary loves picking off passes. They're excellent at that.
Yeah.
I saw Tampa Bay at Dallas on the list a lot. I don't really trust the Tampa Bay defense, and Cooper Rush is like looking okay-ish here and there. So I kind of threw that one out. Arizona 39% at Carolina. That's another one where I don't necessarily like a West Coast team heading east on the road like that, even if it is Bryce Young and the Panthers. So I threw them out. I do have interest in Atlanta, 37%. Versus the Giants. Look great here. Look great on Monday night against the Raiders, which, I mean, they're not much to write home about either. But
which team is more incompetent, the Raiders or Giants right now?
I think, what are we looking at? Like teams 2 and 3 in the draft order next year?
And they look every bit of it. Like, I don't think there's much of a downgrade if you're saying which one's more incompetent.
And you mentioned this like 2 weeks ago that the Colts had a really great fantasy playoff schedule. They're only 21% rostered, and they're versus Tennessee. So that's interesting. Also, I know the Broncos were right on the edge. They're probably above 50%, but I know I dropped them included, thinking there weren't going to be a time I started them the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Well, if they play a Chargers team without Justin Herbert, you can definitely feel good about throwing the Broncos in there.
Yeah, you're right. I think the Packers for sure are the conventional one.
Yep, that's the home run. I actually picked the Packers up last week. I picked the Packers up last week just to have a good defense this week. That's who I dropped Denver for, just for some context.
Yeah, that's a great call. All right, well, that is for us on the Week 16 edition. Technically, we'll have one more regular season consequence waiver wire show. Then the Week 18 show is a mix of waiver wire guys. Then we give our awards out as well.
It's a grab bag. We'll
we get to wear the tuxes,
throw some names out. Yeah,
have some fun with the whole thing.
Exactly. Find a bow tie, do the whole thing.
Is that show also when we recap our over-unders? And if we're correct on that, I think we have one more show after that. We have to stretch it out just a little bit into mid-January.
Oh, do we have to do one more? Shoot.
I think contractually, Jake, the people need us for at least a couple more shows. That's That's where we're at. So we'll have to see.
I'm gonna do my stand-up comedy and get kicked off the YouTube channel. Then,
well,
so
we need Aaron. We need the actual stand-up.
No, actually,
Aaron
we have an
come
actual one
that,
in
if
the
that's the
office
case.
here. I got some bowling alley jokes. Maybe we'll think about. But no, we'll do the over/under recap. Our best bets. Just a quick sneak up here. Our best bets are looking very, very good.
I like it. All right. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back again next week.